You might have seen the controversy in the media recently about the woman in Tasmania who's been banned from coming to church because she thinks that Jesus was fully human, but that he wasn't God, and that in some way, if he were God, that would compromise his humanity. I want to talk a bit about that today. I'm Warren, the rector here at St. Columba's. Glad you could join me for my message of the day. The view that Jesus was only human is not new. It's been around a long time. It gets replayed at various times, and just recently it's been picked up in the media, not particularly because of the theological view, I suspect, but because the lady was banned from church. It's a little bit tricky exactly to know what she's saying because, you have to read it in the newspaper, although I've heard a little bit about her trying to explain her own view. But it does seem to me that she thinks that if Jesus were God, that would somehow betray his humanity and his ability to be a moral guide for us, that we wouldn't be able to then recommend him as someone to obey and follow because of his humanity wouldn't be like ours, I think she's saying, or he wouldn't be like us, I think she's saying. So it's sort of a variation on, Jesus the prophet and only the prophet. We should do what he says, his exemplary life we should follow. We can recommend him to others because he is, I suppose, a true human, is what she might, or others like her throughout the history of the church have said. It does sound to me like she finds in Jesus a true guide for her life and wants to recommend following him to others, which I absolutely applaud. I absolutely agree with that. And I have a lot of sympathy for what she's saying because I started my adult Christian journey focused on Jesus, that prophet who was saying and doing stuff. It is common to think that to say Jesus is fully human and fully God somehow compromises or betrays one or the other. If he's fully human, then that must make some compromise for God, and vice versa. So there have been people in the history of the church who have been happy to have a divine figure, for instance, but the divinity of Jesus had to be in some way safeguarded from his humanity or aspects of his life. So, for example, perhaps his death. We had to sort of put a fence around the divinity so that it didn't get compromised by his death. It's very unbecoming for a God to die, so that couldn't be the case. So some kind of separation had to be made between his humanity and his divinity in this case to protect the divinity from the humanity. Or perhaps another method was to water down his divinity so he wasn't truly God. He could be truly human, but not truly God, so that the divinity, true divinity, was not compromised. And then there are those, like I think the lady who's been banned from church, who felt that Jesus couldn't be truly and fully human if he was also divine. That, for example, the human freedom of Jesus would be constrained if God were inside him as well. Jesus, you can't be free and be obedient in this way, as though the two don't match. It's either one or the other. It's either God or humanity, one or the other. So like two competitors within the one person. So fully human, yes, but not God. And if you start introducing God in some way, there's less humanity, or a human being that he can't be recommended in the same way that he could be if he were fully human. So in some way, less humanity, the more God you put in. The two just are completely contrary to each other. They're competitors. Now, what both these positions miss is the profound and subtle insights into what it means to be human and who God is that flow from the traditional view of the full humanity and full divinity of Jesus. Jesus is fully human and fully divine, God really became human in Jesus. Not half and half, and not a compromise of one or the other, but fully human and fully divine. So just because of the media attention on the issue, let's look a bit at what is at stake when we deny Jesus his divinity, or his full divinity, while still remaining completely committed to his full humanity. So it's the competitor idea, but we can't have the God bit. My first question then, why does affirming Jesus as human and divine, fully both, compromise his humanity? It means we have a certain view of what it means to be human and a certain view of what it means to be God. We have those preconceived ideas. And the Jesus, the fully human, the fully divine Jesus, cannot fit those ideas. That's important just to recognize. It assumes a certain kind of relationship between God and human nature, for instance. And actually, it assumes an understanding of God's relationship to all of creation, because our humanity is part of creation. So this is another reason why this is very important to get this right, because it has implications about how we see God relates to the world. And for those who think that Jesus can be fully human but can't be fully divine, can't be God at all, something like that, at once, have a competitive understanding of the God-creation relationship. The two, in some way, just don't work together very well at all. And actually, if you get them too close, in some way, we will be compromised. Just have a think about that for a moment. That's not a view that Christianity wants to hold. It's a problem. That's the consequence of, in some way, denying Jesus his divinity, because it would in some way compromise his humanity. Those who say he can't be a good guide because he's not one of us if he's divine in some way. You think about that. So it really is this competitive idea. Yeah, but think about it. What about a more profound view of humanity? One that says human being can carry God in such a manner that we might become truly human. The natural fact, rather than compromising us, we're fulfilled in becoming the truest expression of humanity. What if Jesus is the truest expression of humanity, and because he's God, his humanity has been fulfilled? Why couldn't we hold that view? It's a different view. And what about having a view of God that says God can join with our nature such that the Word, this is John chapter 1 verse 14, the Word became flesh and still remain God. So God could be united with us in Jesus and still remain God. That says something about God and God's relationship to us, and about how what it means to be part of creation, in fact. God and humanity are not competitors. Union is the goal. That's part of what the traditional doctrine of the divinity and humanity of Jesus is saying. Even just from a practical point of view, though, if you believe that Jesus is the role model because he's a true human being, then the Church's affirmation of him as truly human and truly God affirms his critical importance to us as a role model. We should listen to him. We should follow him. This is God speaking and acting. Final observation. I've noticed that those who drop the divinity out of Jesus and just focus on him as a moral exemplar have a tendency toward saying things like we should all just love each other more, just like Jesus said, If only we could do that, the world would be such a better place. Let's just try a little bit harder, shall we? I suppose. But if it were that easy, then I suppose we wouldn't have needed Jesus in the first place. And I'll return to that next week. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.